Hi everyone, I'm Jimmy. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm a beginner photographer. I've been shooting for about 5 months now, and my channel is all about the experience of the beginner and trying to show the learning process and the growth process from someone who does not have all the answers and has not figured it out yet. I've already started a video series that's about why I bought certain pieces of my gear, and rather than try to review particular products, what I'm trying to do is explain my thought process and my decision-making process in how, as a beginner, I learned about the wealth of options that were available to me, how I narrowed down which one was the right one, and to some extent how that's worked out for me. And before I go further with that series, I wanted to do sort of an overview where I show all of the gear that I've accumulated in the past 5 months and give you some sort of context to what I'm working with before I go in detail about showing each individual piece of gear. So in this video, I'm going to go very quickly through all of the things I have, briefly describing their purpose, but not really going in depth into why I got this particular thing or how I picked it apart from other similar products. There's a couple of caveats that I want to make. I positioned this as a channel by a beginner for beginners, but there's two things about the gear that I'm going to show you that's maybe a little bit unusual for a beginner. And these things both are a result of the fact that I've been very lucky in the amount of time and money that I've been able to spend in the first 5 months of doing photography. And this is not typical probably of a lot of beginners. So take it with a grain of salt in terms of what you might need as a beginner. This is way overboard for what you would need as a very early beginner. Another reason that I've accumulated this much gear is that the gear aspect, which probably for a lot of us is the case, is one of the really fun parts of photography. Certainly as long as I can remember, I've been into gear collecting in sort of various different domains. So computers, video games, various handheld electronic devices, cameras, of course. All that kind of stuff is, for me, exciting to research, exciting to collect, exciting to talk about, of course, and just really building the collection and always lusting after that new piece of gear is something that's, of course, hard to resist. I've been very lucky that I've been able to buy so much of this stuff in such a short time. I know that's a very unusual setup, but at the same time, it's part of what I've enjoyed about it. So in addition to being able to take beautiful photos that make me really happy for what I've been able to experience and for motivating me to get out and have more of these types of experiences, also just the gear collecting factor is a really fun part of it. So keep those things in mind. You don't need all of this stuff. It's way overboard for what you need as a very beginning photographer. But at the same time, for the amount of time that I've been able to spend on photography over the past 5 months, it's maybe not that unusual of a progression. That is, most people would spend this amount of time as a beginner spread across a much longer period of calendar time. And as a result, if you think of it that way in terms of like the timeline of progression, maybe it's not that unusual that I was able to progress so quickly in realizing why I had a need for the next level of camera or the next level of lens or some of these other accessories. You'll see that a lot of my gear has to do with sort of the accessories around the major things and how to transport, how to fill in little niche situations that may come up when you're shooting. I think that everything that I'm going to talk about will be visible on camera with the exception of the 800D, which I'm using to shoot the video, and the tripod which it's sitting on, which I'll talk about later. The only other thing that won't be visible on the video is, of course, the lens that I'm filming with, which is the Canon EFS 24mm 2.8 STM, which on my 800D is by far my most used lens. It's got the widest field of view. Maybe, I guess actually not as wide as the kit lens, which goes down to 18 millimeters, but it's a prime lens. It's a pancake, so it's very small, very portable, and I found it really to be the most versatile in terms of working for a lot of different compositions in a lot of different situations, being portable, having a fairly fast aperture. So it's really worked out well for me, and with that I've already said more than I will about most of the rest of this gear. And of course, I have some filters compatible with this lens too, which is just a circular polarizer for blocking out light in certain situations, like reflections from water, and then a clear filter, which is just used for protection of the lens because I don't use a lens cap or a lens hood. So let's get to the gear. Let's start here with the carrying gear. So the big daddy of them all is the Peak Design 45-liter travel backpack, which you see here. This is a great backpack that I got via their Kickstarter campaign just this past fall. I'll do a more in-depth review on this later. For now, I'm just showing you that that's where I keep all of this stuff. So let's open it up. And inside you will find 2 additional pieces of Peak Design gear. This is the small and medium camera cube that are used for internal packing units. Again, I'll go into detail about these in a future video, but let's just take a look at what's inside each one. So inside the small cube, you have this big open compartment, which normally would house the Canon T7i, aka the 800D, which I'm using to film this video. So that's this main compartment right here. In the side compartment, I have another Peak Design piece of equipment. This is called the Shell, and this is used for as a waterproof storage unit for one of the cameras. More likely the 800D, which doesn't have weatherproofing, unlike the 6D Mark II, which does. I haven't had to use this yet, but when I went to Yosemite, I was thinking I might be near some waterfalls getting some spray and wanted to make sure I could protect it if I needed to. As it turns out, I didn't really need to. In here, I've also got some spare anchors for the Peak Design straps and other gear, and some backup hex key wrenches. In this pocket here is just one 77mm polarizing filter. This is for the 24-70 f4L lens that I use mostly with the 6D Mark II. This is from B&W. Also in this little side pocket, I've got remote trigger for either of the cameras, so I can wirelessly trigger the shutter and not introduce camera shake or take a self-portrait or a group picture. Okay, let's look inside the medium camera cube now. Inside the medium cube, we'll start with the main item of interest, of course, which is the camera. This is the 6D Mark II with the battery grip, and then on the camera right now is the 24-70 IS USM f4L lens. As you can see, I also have the side of the camera outfitted with the Peak Design clutch, which is a really handy way of quickly holding onto the camera, giving you some little extra stability and a great way to carry it and prevent it from slipping off. You see the other anchor at the bottom that can be used for attaching other Peak Design gear. So that's the camera. In here I've got my other L series lens, my most recent purchase. This is the Canon 70-200mm IS USM f4L. I think it's the Mark II version. I've just used this briefly, but that was to replace my EFS lens, which I'll get to in a moment. We also have some GoPro gear here. I've got the 3-way for the GoPro. My GoPro equipment actually predates all of the rest of this stuff. I've had it for several years now, but since it is photography, videography gear, I now keep it all together. So this acts as a selfie stick and a tripod. This bottom part unscrews and has a tripod attachment that you can mount, so this can be stood up, which is has come in handy in a few situations. Underneath the 3-way, I have my flash and remote transmitter, which I actually haven't used very much, but is a good thing to have. I have the Yongnuo YN600EX RT Mark II and the YN-E3 RT radio transmission head unit. This also comes with a mount or a stand for the flash if you want to set it up on a table or some other surface. Over here I've got the Nifty 50, the Canon EF lens 50mm 1.8 STM, and on it there's a clear filter just for protection from B&W. Underneath here there's a little strap that's just got a whole bunch of batteries for the flash, backup batteries. It takes AA batteries, so it's always good to have some extras of those when you're in the field. I've got one filter. This is a 0.6 ND filter, which I believe is 3 stops. I actually haven't used this yet, but I wanted to get one after I was in Yosemite when I wanted to take pictures of water that I wanted to be smooth, but I couldn't do it because the light was too bright, and so I couldn't have a slow enough shutter speed. So I'm hoping to get some good use out of this next time I'm in a situation where I need to photograph water in a bright light. That works on the 24mm EFS lens, so I may not use it quite as much as I used to now that I have the 60 Mark II and the L series lenses, but I still plan to give this a try when I'm in such a situation. In this little pocket here, I've got a couple of extra batteries for the 800D. These are from Q Aproda, and they are just basically compatible with the same type of battery that is in the Canon. White balance card from ybal.com. This is useful if you need to take a picture and get the white balanced completely exact so that you can later determine exactly what was considered white under the lighting conditions that the picture was taken. I've used that a little bit. It's more of a nice to have sort of feature. And then off to the side here, I've got two more lenses which I mostly won't use much at this point, if ever. This is the kit lens for the 800D. It's the EFS 18 to 55mm IS. Served me very well. I had no real complaints about it, but I've just moved on from this by having the 24 to 70 L series now. And I found that with the 800D I was mostly using primes anyway. This was my first telephoto lens. This is the EFS 55 to 250 IS. And this is probably my weakest lens, actually. I think this is the only one where I really was never happy with any of the photos I got from it. They were always a little bit soft, regardless of the focal length or any other settings I was using. So I really think my most recent L series telephoto lens was the biggest upgrade from something I had previously. I forgot to mention these also have, both of these lenses also have clear filters on them. And I believe, yeah, this one has a UV protector that I inherited from my brother, so thank you to him for that. And this one had a clear filter, and I believe also has a polarizing filter on it, which is from Zykos. I think that was also inherited from my brother. And the other polarizing filters that I've bought since then have been B&W brand. I don't think it makes too much of a difference, but just in case anyone's curious. And then finally we have the GoPro that I use, which is the GoPro Hero 5 Black. I bought this when it was brand new. It was October of 2016, I guess, when this came out. So it's since been replaced by the Hero 6 and now the Hero 7, but it still performs really well. I have no complaints with it, especially when coupled with the GoPro Karma Grip, which is the handheld gimbal that you see here, which gives me really, really smooth pans and sort of handheld shake-free video. So those are great, no complaints about them. Also, of course, not pictured is the tripod that I'm currently shooting this on, which is a Zomei brand. I believe it's the 66 or 67 as the model number. And it served me quite well. I have really no trouble with that at all. I also have two Peak Design straps that I use. This one here that's currently attached to the small camera cube is the Slide Lite, which is intended for mirrorless cameras and sort of lighter weight equipment. And you can see all of the Peak Design gear attaches via these connecting and disconnecting anchors. Let me try to get it in the frame a little better. You can see on this one, there's this little round piece that you just push in and it slides out. And then this can be detached and attached to a camera or another bag or another piece of gear. And then these little anchors can just be attached to each individual piece of gear so that you can swap the anchors back and forth. So I'm using this for my single small camera cube, which I can take with me when I'm out in the field to carry an extra lens and some accessories, extra batteries and things like that. And then actually my main strap is the heavier duty Slide. So this is the Slide as opposed to the Slide Lite. And this is intended for heavier cameras, you know, flagship or other full frame DSLR, heavier equipment, a bag with a lot of heavy accessories in it. I find that the camera straps work really well when combined with the capture clip, once again from Peak Design. You can tell I'm a big fan of Peak Design. Now this little thing can attach to a belt or a backpack strap or something of that nature, and it just screws on with these little things. It tightens in, and it can open and close to get onto your belt, and then you can slide a tripod camera plate into here and click something into place so it can hold a camera or a pair of binoculars or something like that. And what I do is I keep this on the side of my belt, and I attach the camera, here I'll show you with the 60 Mark II. Attach the camera to the side plate, I attach the camera to the capture plate like that, just slide it in, and then this is attached to my belt. And that will keep it steady from shaking around when I walk. But for a very heavy camera like this, it needs really more support for its weight. So in that case, I will also attach the slide to the anchor points on the side and the bottom and wear the strap around my shoulders. So between the strap holding up part of the weight and balancing it across my body and the capture clip, which is keeping it from sort of jostling as I walk, I have a really sturdy setup for this. And then I just press this little slide button to slide it right off. It also works really well with the 2-camera setup when I'm out doing a vlog, and I have the 60 Mark II on the strap and the 800D just in the clip by itself. It's actually light enough that I can carry it without additional support from a strap, and that works really well for being able to just pull it off my belt and use it for video when needed. And with that, I believe you've seen my entire collection.